Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you listen to this or watch this video. Last video I did was more of one of my motivational talks, and it wasn't talking too much about culture or behavior or race or anything like that. As some of you know, been dealing with some issues, but that's no reason for me not to provide content for you guys. Not that bad. But today I want to talk about something, and I'm going to title it air conditioning, or air out your conditioning. And on my other channel, myranjones, I actually titled the most recent talk that's going to come out, air out your conditioning as well. In that talk, I'm talking about our conditioning for our mentality when it comes to success and motivation and why we don't achieve. And in this one, I'm going to talk some of the same things, but I'm going to be more, I guess, race specific, because society has conditioned us just like it conditioned our parents and grandparents. And because society conditioned our grandparents conditioned our parents, and our parents conditioned us, and then we turn around and take that same conditioning and we condition our kids. So guess what our kids are going to do? They're going to condition their kids with the same thinking. And many times in our culture, that's unfortunate. And society, for the most part, has conditioned us especially for lives of mediocrity and many times poverty. They put entertainers and athletes in front of us, especially as blacks, to show us a life we'll never achieve, because it's a very, very, very small percentage of people that are going to make it to the professional ranks in any sport. I remember my first year at U of H, several of my teammates were actually drafted into the NFL. And that's pretty much unheard of for several members of the same team to be drafted into the NFL in the same year. But they show us these athletes to show us a life basically that we'll never achieve. And they do this in order to create a spirit within us of envy, jealousy, coveting, and hopelessness. Because what are we saying? When we get that, if my kid doesn't, life will be on easy street. If my son gets drafted into the NFL or the NBA or the Major League Baseball, and because not too many of our kids are going into Major League Baseball, and I think their contracts are bigger than the NBA and NFL players. But we're conditioning ourselves that if we don't make it in one of those fields, there's no hope for the future that will ever make a huge income. And there are men and women around this country and around this world who make huge income that never played a sport their entire life. But that's why they do that. They want to tell you if you don't make it in one of those industries, there's no hope. You don't become a Fortune 500 CEO, there's no hope. And it's just not true. I mean, just think about Robert Smith. All of a sudden, black people know who Robert Smith is because he told a Morehouse class of 2019 that he was going to alleviate all of their student loan debt. Now, all of a sudden, black people know who he is. Well, I've been knowing who Robert Smith is for years. I knew he was a billionaire. Robert Smith's been on the scene teaching and talking about business and economics. I know I first heard about him around 1994, so he's been around. But for many of us in society, the older we become, the less motivation there is to grow and improve our lives, our self-esteem, our finances, and our self-image. We get the tiny cost of a living raises because that's what it is. It's tiny in the big scheme of things. And if you don't want to think it's tiny, take whatever your raise is and divide it by 26, because that's how many paychecks you get. But we look at missed opportunities. Then we justify our lack of motivation by telling self that we're too old, we're too young, we're too black, we're too white, we're too fat, we're too skinny, too pretty, too ugly, whatever excuse you want to use for your situation. We've been so conditioned in our lives that we argue with skin color, which is conditioning. As blacks, we were told we were cursed because of the sin of Noah's son Ham, although his son Canaan and his direct descendants were the ones who were cursed only. And if you really understand who you are as black people, even though our ancestors, many of us, not all, many of our ancestors were taken from the west coast of Africa during the slave trade, most of those slaves that were taken, I would say over 85 to 90% of those slaves that were taken were actually black Hebrews. They were not what we would term African, or as they call us today, African Americans. You are the true Hebrews. I don't care what society has told you and conditioned you to believe, and all of your preachers are up in the pulpit telling you to support a certain people because of what the Bible says. Well, if they were reading their Bibles right, the people they supporting ain't the people they should be supporting. And if they knew the people they were supposed to be supporting were you, then you have to ask your question, would they still be in favor of what the Bible said? But that's another talk for another day. But we've been conditioned that we're African American, and we're not, even though they came from the continent of Africa, and Israel is the home of the Hebrews. They just, because Israel is actually part of the tectonic plate of Africa. But we argue over political parties because as blacks, we've been taught that we are supposed to vote for Democrats only, which is conditioning. We're told we're not supposed to vote for socialism, but in essence, what we're voting for when we vote for Democrats is we're voting for socialism and communism. Norman Thomas, who ran for the presidential seat several times in the last century, ran for the Socialist Party. And at some point, he in the 1960-something debate with Barry Goldwater, he said there was no need for him to run as a socialist anymore because the Democrats had adopted that platform 100% wholeheartedly. And ain't it amazing? That's when the Civil Rights Act was signed, and you follow the Democratic Party, and that's why we support socialism right today. And right today, the heads of the Socialist Party and the Communist Party said there's no need for them to even run candidates anymore because they have actually joined forces with the Democratic Party in order for one reason only, and that is to take down the Republican Party. So you don't even understand what socialism and communism is because these people keep telling you it's good. Socialism is slavery. Let me say that again. Socialism is slavery. If you don't believe me, find a digital copy of George Fitzhugh, Fitzzugh. He has a book called Sociology for the South. Or if you want to find another book online, both of these are available online. The Pattern Nation by Henry Rickson, and understand what those two books are talking about, and you will actually find out what socialism really is. I could give you plenty more, but just start there. And then after you read those, if you read those, tell me that you still think socialism is a good thing. Tell me that you think communism is a good thing. So let's move on. But see, I get a little ticked off about this conditioning that we have, and we don't even understand how and why we've been conditioned. We say we are too tired to do anything when we get off work that could help better our situation in life because of our conditioning. But if the after work activity is something we deem fun, all of a sudden we have enough energy because we've been conditioned that fun is doing something that feels good, which to a degree is true. But as my mentor says, fun is when you're winning. And I'm just going to add a little bit On to that, I'm saying fun is when you're winning in life first. And I'm not, that's kind of what my mentor said. I'm just adding on so, it could be my words instead of his. But as we get older, the health and medical experts have conditioned us when we were younger that as we get older, we should have aches and pains and be on multiple medication because they're conditioning us to be sick. We expect to retire on less than we are having difficulty living on right now because the financial experts have conditioned us to believe that. They're conditioning us to be poorer than we are now. The daily dose of news has conditioned us to live in fear for our lives, the lives of our mate, the lives of our children, and even the lives of our pets, especially if we live in a predominantly black or minority community. They are conditioning society that only blacks and minorities are criminals. Although in my book, that's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or if you'd like an autographed copy, you can email me at myranjones@gmail.com. But hey, what do I know? I prove from the FBI page that the biggest criminals have skin that equates with what we call leprosy. If you are lost on that term, you need to look up leprosy or just get my book for explanation. We live based on a perceived lack because we keep hearing that there's a shortage of everything, especially if you're black, which is conditioning. We don't believe we can earn a huge income or one that is substantially greater than what we are earning now because whatever job we do, it has a limit, which is conditioning. It's conditioning you to remain in your industry as an employee, but not as an owner. See, when you become an owner, there's no limit. But as an employee, there's a limit on what the position pays. And we don't see many blacks in positions as CEOs because these companies have to keep blacks limited in order to show society that there are only a few good ones out there. That's why in the entire existence of this country, we have only had a total of 16 black CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, with the latest being Mary Winston at Bed Bath & Beyond. That's conditioning us in society that not many blacks are capable of leading large companies. That goes way back to over a century ago when the NAACP, which has never been a black organization, had W.E.B. Du Bois tell blacks that they needed to leave the mindset of Booker T. Washington, who was actually teaching and showing blacks how to become successful business owners, not employees. And he told blacks to leave that mindset and go and work under companies that were owned by folks with white skin, because that's what a prestige was. And because Du Bois had a degree from what we term a good university versus Booker T. Washington, who had a degree from a HBCU, we felt Du Bois was more credible than a man who actually built and shaped his own life. We don't see in our lives the lives of our kids or the lives of our grandkids any aspect of achieving a lifestyle where we can create a degree of wealth because of our poor and poverty conditioning. Following the plan of Du Bois hasn't worked. If following his plan hasn't worked, why are we still following it right today? I can say that it's not working because we're still complaining about being behind financially right today. I can say we no longer believe in the ability we had when we were young kids because we've been conditioned to get rid of the individual thought process and submit to every whim of the greater good or group. Who determines the greater good for you? Who determines the greater good for your family? What group other than your family should come first? If you're not married, what person should come before you? When you fly on any airline, I don't care where you are in the world, you get on any airplane, they all tell you the same thing. If the cabin loses pressure, put your own, I'm going to say that again, your own oxygen mask on first. They are telling you not to try to help someone else first because your survival is the most important to you. That means even if you are traveling with a mate or kids, their future depends on your survival. Their future depends on your survival. We've been conditioned to place everyone else's needs before our own. And everyone else is putting their own needs first. They're not thinking about you. Because they are getting different programming than what you're getting. As a people, we're loving people for everybody. But we don't know the intentions of everybody else that we're trying to love. And because they know we're giving people, they turn around and take advantage of us. We need to start looking out for ourselves first. Forget everybody else. Looking out for everybody else's needs. You take care of your needs first, just like they're doing. I don't care who gets mad about it. Take care of your needs first. So I'm getting a little hostile right now. Let me get back to what I'm talking about. But we believe we're destined to live a life a certain way because our parents lived a certain way. And their parents lived a certain way because we've been conditioned. And we pass the same mentality to our offspring, and they end up not living much better than we did. We've been led by health experts in society that all of our diseases are inherited from the genes of our parents. There have been many studies. It's been actually proven that only 6% of diseases are actually inherited. The reason we end up with the same diseases as our parents is because we tend to eat a lot of same poor quality foods they fed us as kids. I mean, I remember just thinking about it just giving me the shivers. You know, growing up, you know, every year for the New Year, the turn of the New Year, we call it New Year's Day, but, you know, it's only 1 year, so where did the S come from? So it's New Year Day. My mother always fixed chitlins. And there was no alternative. You either ate or you starved. And you know, the older I got and started really learn. I mean, it looked nasty when it was in the pot. It smelled. It stunk up the whole house when she would clean them the night before. And so, since I've been gone from home, I haven't touched a chitlin. Now, I'm gonna just tell you, I don't eat that. And you know, pig feet and all that stuff. You know, I mean, I just get the shivers in. You know. But that's just that conditioning. But the biggest indicator of us inheriting diseases from our parents is because we have inherited their mental programming and thought processes. If you don't believe that, how do you end up with the same disease that a step parent or adopted parent has if it isn't the thought process? Because the DNA and the cell structures are not the same. We've been conditioned to believe that some races are superior and others inferior, because that plays right into the hands of the handlers of society. We've been taught there is a certain group of people who are just so smart when it comes to business ownership, not realizing in their entire existence they've been behind the drug industry and slavery, and that's how they built their fortune. There's another group of people who come into the black communities and run nail salons and fast food places, and they want to walk around and act superior as well. But they offer services that black people wanted, and instead of finding a way to start our own, we voluntarily give them our dollars and allow them to talk in their language about us while they take our money, because we've been conditioned to allow other people to treat us as subhuman. Every other race as a whole, I'm not speaking about individuals, conditions each other that we are less than them. The sad thing is, many of them actually know our true heritage as a people, historically, which is the real reason they do everything in their power to push us down repeatedly. Admit it. If you have a sibling that is considered the favorite child, something within you wants to see them fail, doesn't it? And based on your upbringing, you may be guilty of the conditioning, because nothing is ever 100% except death. You know, as I said, nothing is ever 100%, because some of us want to see all of our siblings succeed. We choose our friends many times based on our weaknesses, because we've been conditioned to feel that in order to feel better about self, we must surround ourselves with someone we deem less than us. And unfortunately, Many of the people that hang around us or hang around you have actually chosen you for the same reason, because they feel like you less than them. We live in certain neighborhoods and avoid others based on the conditioning from friends and the media. We send our children to white friendly schools because we've been conditioned that their schools are better than ours. We eat the wrong foods, even those listed as healthy, because we're being conditioned in order to make ourselves into customers for the pharmaceutical industry and earlier death than the other races. See, if we can do everything in our power, if they can make it available, give us access to everything that will destroy us ourselves, they don't have to do anything. You know, think about the restaurants, if you want to call them that, in the black community. Think about where the abortion clinics are, in what communities the abortion clinics are. Think about all the crime that they talk about. And so they provide the environment for us to do it ourselves. It's going to take a change in mentality for us to rise above that. But we're being conditioned to destroy ourselves. How many reports have come out saying that what was once perceived as healthy food is actually detrimental to our health? We feel like we can only listen and learn from someone who has a title next to their name, including the people in the pulpit, or a degree that certifies them as an expert in one field, especially in the black race. I remember talking to a former schoolmate from the University of Houston. She had run track and I had played football there. We had not seen each other in a number of years, and we were catching up at a tailgating event. She received her degree in law, and we had been talking for about 30 minutes, uninterrupted, when she asked, "Well, Myron, what did you eventually get your degree in?" And I told her that some things had happened in my life and I wasn't able to finish. And up until that point, we had a great conversation. And it was at that moment that I mentioned that I didn't get my degree that she immediately ended the conversation. When she walked away, I just laughed, because my mind is not to the point where I put you above me. I don't care how many degrees you have. That just shows that you have expertise in an area that I don't. That's all that shows. And I'm pretty sure I have expertise in an area that you don't. So it doesn't matter if you have a degree or not. We chose different paths in life. And my mentor has said that a degree only proves that you have a capability to learn something. We feel that people without degrees are not worthy of our respect because society, especially black society, has conditioned us, without education, you're nothing. Well, who says what education really is? What we do when we hit that building in kindergarten and we leave that other building at the university, that's schooling. That's not education. You need to know the difference. And so we tend to place importance on people with titles, even if they're immoral and they're corrupt, because society says we should honor them because of that one accomplishment. We work to get out of our, and I'm not putting down accomplishment, make no mistake about that. I mean, when people do great things, I believe we should respect what they accomplished. But I'm saying don't put them above other people just because of that accomplishment, which is what we've been conditioned to do. And we work to get out of our current state, but nothing seems to work for us because our conditioning is so powerful from the time we are formed in the womb of our mother to age 7. And that's why we continue to struggle in many, if not all, areas of our lives. Believe it or not, as adults, we are living at the exact level of the programming our parents gave us through hypnosis while we lived in their presence, in their earshot. The only way to change that programming is to air out your conditioning. In order to break the stronghold, you have to recondition your mind.